And we are live now, so just take note.
Okay, let's switch videos off and over to you, Jackie.
Right. Good evening to all who have joined us from Cape Town and all over the world. Tonight it is an honor and privilege to welcome Rabbi Hier of the Simon Wiesenthal Center to deliver our annual lecture. Without anything more from me, I call on Dr. David Hier, past chairman of the Jacob Gitlin Library, to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you very much. A warm welcome to you all and a special welcome to our guest speaker, Rabbi Marvin Hier. Rabbi Hier has had a long and distinguished career. Born and bred in New York, he received smicha in 1962 from Rabbi Mendel Kravitz, Rosh Yeshiva of the Rabbi Jacob Joseph School. In 1964, he was appointed rabbi in Vancouver, Canada. In 1977, following a visit to Holocaust sites in Europe, he came to Los Angeles to create the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Under his leadership, the center has become one of the foremost Jewish human rights agencies in the world, and the center maintains offices throughout North America, Europe, Israel, and Argentina. Rabbi Hier is the recipient of 2 Academy Awards. In 1981 as co-producer and co-writer for Genocide, a documentary on the Holocaust, and in 1997 as co-producer of The Long Way Home, which charts the struggles of thousands of refugees who survived the Holocaust. As Dean and founder of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, the Museum of Tolerance and Moriah Films, Rabbi Hier has been the recipient of numerous awards and decorations. In 2007 and 2008, he was named the most influential rabbi in America by Newsweek. At the present time, a Museum of Tolerance and Human Dignity, a project of the Wiesenthal Center, is nearing completion in Jerusalem. In 2015, Rabbi Hier published his memoirs entitled Meant to Be. It is a fount of information and insight written in a most engaging style. This book is available at the Gitlin Library, and I urge everyone to read it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure that I call upon Rabbi Hier to deliver this year's Jacob Gitlin Memorial Lecture. Thank you.
This is ridiculous.
Rabbi, you need to unmute, please.
No.
Rabbi, please unmute yourself.
It's an honor to be able to deliver the Gitlin Memorial Lecture. I might also say that for a little nachis, Sean Rogers worked for the Simon Wiesenthal Center here, and I'm sure it brings great nachis to Jackie to give personal regards to you from him. Let me begin by saying my career really started by bar mitzvah. I had a Rebbe, interestingly, you won't believe it, he was a Satmar Chassid, but he taught in the Lower East Side in a yeshiva called Yeshivas Rabbeinu Shlomo Kluger. This is what happened. On the side, he taught bar mitzvahs, and you had to go into a store on the Lower East Side where he prepared you for the Haftorah, coming bar mitzvah.
Okay, did you?
And what happened was this. As he was teaching me the Haftorah and the brachas, he said, say it louder in Yiddish. He says, Zog hecha, hecha. He says, I said, Rebbe, why I have to say hecha? They hear me. He says, Moshe, I want to tell you something. Every bar mitzvah has to learn something from the Holocaust that befell Klal Yisrael. You can't just get up there say the Haftorah as if nothing happened to our generation. Every bar mitzvah boy has the opportunity to make up for what the Nazis took away from us. As the Torah teaches us, Vayikach Moshe es atzmas Yosef. Moses, when he liberated the Jewish people and took them out of Egypt, in a very busy time for him, the Torah tells us he took with him the bones of Joseph. Said Rabbi Yankel of Landsgraben, so must every Jew commit himself forever to take with us in our journey through life the bones of the millions lost to us in Auschwitz, Treblinka, and other infamous camps. That's why, after spending 15 years in the rabbinate in Vancouver, I moved to Los Angeles with the two purposes.
That's just your microphone.
To create a yeshiva University, high schools of Los Angeles, which we started in 1977, graduated 3,000 boys and girls who've gone on. We have a yeshiva for boys and a yeshiva for girls. They've gone on to graduate from the most famous universities. And at the same time that I started EULA in 1977, I had the idea to go and ask Simon Wiesenthal for permission to start the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which today I'm proud to say has 400,000 members around the world. And here is how it started. We were in the yeshiva building. The rooms were not prepared yet, 1977. And the previous owners broke all the walls. So all you had was an empty space. And how was I going to work there? So I had a chair, and somebody came up with the idea, Rabbi, you got to get yourself a 150-foot cable, and you walk through the building, and you're watching them construct the yeshiva rooms and whatever. So I had this 150-foot extension wire, and what happens is I'm walking with it. The phone rings, and a rough voice is on the other side. He says, "Is this Rabbi Hier?" I said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Who is speaking?" He said, "My name is Mickey Rudin. I'm an attorney. Are you going to be in your office for the next 2 hours?" Now, I didn't exactly tell him. All we had is an extension cord, and it's not a big office, but I told him, yes, I'll be here for the next 2 hours. May I know who's going to call me? And he says to me, "You want to know who's going to call you? Frank Sinatra." I said, "What? Frank Sinatra?" I said, "Why is he going to call me?" He said, because he read the B'nai B'rith Messenger, Jewish newspaper. Now you want to start the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and he wants to call you. So I said, I'm very honored. I said, but I still can't believe it. He said, "Neither can I." I told him he's out of his mind. "Frank," I said, "why would you want to call? They just started. It could be a terrible disaster. Why do you want to get involved with that?" So I said, "So Mr. Rudin, if that's the case, why is he calling me?" And Mickey Rudin said, "Rabbi, because he doesn't listen to his lawyer. That's why." And sure enough, Frank Sinatra called. About an hour and a half later, he invited my wife and myself to his home in Palm Springs. Said, "Rabbi, I want to help you. Come to my house." I came to his house. As soon as we got there, he says to his wife, "Barbara, tell Mickey to come over here." Mickey Rudin and Danny Schwartz. So Mickey Rudin and Danny Schwartz come into the room, and Danny Schwartz brings with him a telephone directory, and Frank Sinatra starts dialing Jewish friends that he knows. soliciting them on the phone, telling Don Sofa, Turnberry Isle Country Club in Miami, Don, I'm sending my rabbi over in the next few weeks. Sure hope you're not going to be cheap. We need to start the Simon Wiesenthal Center to fight these anti-Semites. And that's how it all began. He introduced me to everybody in Hollywood. He was a longtime friend and supporter of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. In addition to that, if that wasn't enough, he basically, if someone later on showed me, someone bought at an auction his telephone directory, and he called me up. He's a Jewish fellow, and he said, Rabbi, do you know that he's got you on his telephone? He's got both your numbers, your office number, and your home number on his telephone directory. And that's how this started, which, by the way, is very interesting because when you think about it, that's how Jewish history, all of Jewish history started that way. Through miracles, things that are not supposed to happen. We are a small people, and it happens. And I can't, someone told me, while you're speaking, you better tell them the story. So what happened was that as a result of this, we got to know Jerry Seinfeld. And we took Jerry Seinfeld to Israel. And when Jerry Seinfeld went to Israel, we took him to the Kotel on Friday night. So the first thing is, he says to me on the Kotel, he says, Rabbi, these fur hats, streimels, whatever, he didn't know that you call them streimels. He said fur hats. How much they cost? I said, Jerry, if it's a good one, it costs a couple of $1,000. So he says to me, Rabbi, Ocean's 14. He says, stealing the streimels. And Jerry Seinfeld then went with me and Jeffrey Katzenberg, showed him this was many years later, showed him the spot where we, thanks to Teddy Kolak, he gave us the land, which we are building now in the final stages of construction. The Museum of Tolerance, Jerusalem, was on that spot. And Seinfeld said, the Jews, he says, we Jews, it's unbelievable. When we're down, something always happens and we're up. And that was an amazing story and taught me a lot. And with that, I would like to tell you more that I think you will find interesting. We say in our tefillos when we daven, if you would ask me, so how come the Jews, against all odds, are still here? What is the miracle? So the miracle is, we say it in davening, we thank God for his miracles that are with us every day, in every season, in the evening, in the morning, in the afternoon. For those who don't believe it, the only thing we have to do, every Jew needs a good ophthalmologist that can connect us with Avraham Avinu's most important teaching. Abraham, the first Jew, said this, Vayares Amoka Mirochot, and I saw the place from afar. You have to have the ability to see a place from afar if you want to understand Jewish destiny and Jewish history. If you don't believe in that verse that Abraham taught the Jewish people, the ability to see things from afar, as the great 20th century thinker, Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik put it, God always reveals himself to man at a time of growing evil in the world, when life appears bereft of any hope. It is precisely then, he said, that we get these winks from heaven. let us explore some of those incredible winks from heaven. In the worst few weeks of Theodor Herzl's life, everything went bad. Baron de Rothschild, Baron Hirsch reject his idea of helping the Jews to return to the promised land. They think the idea is an unachievable fantasy and they don't want to contribute to it. Additionally, if that blow wasn't enough, Herzl, who used to get small checks or whatever from Britain, from Jews in Britain and other countries, he is immediately called, and Herzl finds out that the British government wants to disallow any contributions to Herzl's cause. This would absolutely paralyze and finish him. And Herzl says, I've got to go to England. Desperate, he goes to England looking for a lawyer. He interviews a few, settles on one, before returning home completely dejected. A few weeks later, there's a knock on his door. He opens the door, and there is the Reverend Hechler, a Christian minister, is holding a map, and he says, can I put the map, spread out the map on the floor? Spreads up the map on the floor, begins to tell Herzl, based on biblical readings, I think that you're the chosen one to take the Jewish people back to the Holy Land. Herzl is about to shut the door and say, I have so much sorrows. Now I need this, that there's someone thinks I'm a prophet, etc. Just as he's about to shut the door on the Reverend Hechler, Hechler says to him like this, by the way, I work at the British Embassy in Vienna. I teach the ambassador's children. And then he says, just as I used to teach previously the Grand Duke of Baden's children and the German Kaiser, I'm connected with him too. Herzl says, are you telling me that you personally know the German Kaiser who controls Palestine? Herzl says, of course, says the Reverend Hechler. And if you cover my train ticket, I can take you to him. Astounded and beside himself, Herzl accepts. A few months later, Herzl is in Palestine with the Kaiser, something Rothschild or Baron Hirsch could never achieve. Soon after, because he was received by the Kaiser in Palestine, Herzl is invited to meet with the Pope. None of the barons ever met with the Pope. But that wasn't the only heavenly wink, Rabbi Soloveitchik teaches us. What are the odds that the accountant that Herzl, the lawyer and accountant that Herzl had hired and befriended in England, would later become England's Prime Minister, Lloyd George, and that he would appoint Arthur Balfour as his foreign minister, and that Arthur Balfour would then issue the Balfour Declaration, which made possible the creation of the state of Israel. Isn't that what Abraham meant when he said, and I saw the place from afar? You've got to be able to see the place from afar, meaning you've got to watch for God's winks. But that wasn't the Ribono Shel Olam's only wink regarding Eretz Yisrael. There is an even more unbelievable wink. One day, in a small shtetl in Plans, Poland, at the Hasidic Shtibel in Plans, Poland of the Ger Rebbe, this is what happens that Shabbos morning. In the mid-1980s, a young boy, 12 years old, is taken by his grandfather to this Hasidic Shtibel. While sitting, he overhears the following discussion in the bench in front of him in Yiddish, where one elderly Jew is saying to another, Mizukte Mashiach is ungekommen. They say the Messiah has arrived. A young man with a long black beard. His name is Herzl. And he says he's coming to redeem the Jewish people and take them back to Eretz Yisrael. Who is that boy who overheard that conversation in shul? His name was David Gruen. He never forgot that incident. 8 years later, while attending the university in Warsaw, Gruen hears that his hero, Herzl, has died. He writes to a friend, quote, "I do not know why, but ever since that day in shul, I felt as if I was Herzl's alter ego, and it will be my responsibility one day to finish his work." Yes, on May 14th, 1948, 12-year-old David Gruen, now David Ben-Gurion, does exactly that. He declares the creation of the state of Israel before the entire world. But those winks were not only confined to Europe. Those winks, as Rabbi Soloveitchik puts it, happened right here in America as well. In 1944, the Democratic Convention opens in Chicago. There, a young Harry Truman is given the assignment of nominating James F. Burns for vice president. At the last minute, a top secret medical report on Franklin Roosevelt's condition concludes that Roosevelt will die within a year. The White House shifts its position and now asks Harry Truman to run for vice president. Shocked, Harry Truman accepts and miraculously, in the second vote, wins the vice presidency. 4 years later, the question of the Jewish state arises. And George Marshall, Secretary of State during World War II, and a hero to many, opposes the idea of the recognition of a Jewish state. Precisely at that moment, Eddie Jacobson, who happened to be Harry Truman's business partner, who first met Truman when they were assigned the same bunk as soldiers in World War I, arrives at the White House to urge the president to recognize the Jewish state and to meet with Chaim Weizmann, who's waiting in a New York hotel for the appointment. Truman, because of his partner's suggestion, Eddie Jacobson, invites Weizmann and tells his bunk partner, he says to him, he says, "If you won't tell anyone, I'll tell you. If a Jewish state is declared, I, as President of the United States, intend to recognize it." What are the chances, my friends, of such an occurrence? Was it not Abraham's message to the Jewish people? Vayar es hamokel mirochok. Always look for the sign from afar. And that was the pathway for this World War sergeant who assigned Eddie Jacobson and Harry Truman from Missouri. That is why the first Jew, Avraham Avinu, taught the Jewish people, when things are down, things look bad, it looks impossible. We have tsuris now. Anti-Semitism is everywhere. In the United States, I would say this, Simon Wiesenthal used to say when he was asked, "Why do you live after the war in Vienna, where the Nazis live?" And Simon said, he says, if you want to find out about malaria, the disease, you got to find out where the mosquitoes live. And the mosquitoes live in Vienna. That's why I'm here with the Nazis. Today, it's such a tragedy. If Simon Wiesenthal would be alive today, the sadness would be he'd probably live in the United States, because that's where the anti-Semitism is today, in the United States, in England, in France. It's everywhere. But the Rabbanu Shalom gave us the antidote. He said, V'al nisecho, we say it in davening 3 times a day. The miracles that will occur to us, V'al niflosecho, v'tovosecho, shebechol yom, erev v'voka, in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. If you look for God's winks, as Rabbi Soloveitchik puts it, you will always find that we were never abandoned. No matter what happens in all these centuries, Klal Yisrael will survive. The Medinas Yisrael will survive. Jerusalem is now the capital of Israel, recognized by the entire world. The Jewish people will go from mechoil lechoil, from strength to strength, ad bias goel tzedek b'mheira v'yomeinu. Amen.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi. It's been a particular privilege that maybe it's the miracle of Zoom that we have the ability to see you from afar and to have you here in Cape Town for the Gitlin Memorial Lecture. It's a very, very special privilege to have you here. And as you say, at times which are very strained and very traumatized and dramatic in terms of not only health issues, but in what is happening in the world, about a lack of tolerance generally in the way things are panning out. We also live in a continent which has a history of separations and different attitudes, and maybe we will need to talk with a vision from afar that maybe a museum of tolerance would be one of the things that could be based in Cape Town and have hopefully as dramatic an effect in going forth and teaching us to be able to empathize, to be able to see, and to take a far more distant look at things and see into the future. So I really cannot thank you enough for what you've done and the insights you've given us, and the importance to the Jacob Gitlin Library to have someone of your stature giving the lecture, which is a very important part of our annual celebration of who we are as a library. In fact, I venture to say the only Jewish library on the African continent, and a public library which serves the people and the community in and around Cape Town extensively, if not beyond. So thank you very, very much for being a part of this. And we would also like to thank our audience who tuned in from all over the world. And I'd like them to know about the Gitlin Library, because it is a very special place in Cape Town if you ever should visit. Otherwise, to have a look on the website of the Jacob Gitlin Library to see what it stands for, its ethos, and what it does. It's also a very appropriate time, we're not looking into too far ahead, to make sure that we wish everyone here a happy and, above all, a healthy and sweet year. So to everybody, a Shana Tova Matuka, and we hope that there'll be other opportunities for the Gitlin Library to stay in touch with your center. I'd also like you to know, you didn't speak about your very, may I say, famous film career. I think that's one of the things we might have to bring you back again, because I thought you just ignored that part of your career. And I'd like people to know that the Jacob Gitlin Library has a complete set of your films that are available for them to check out and view. So thank you again for being with us, and for our audience for being with us as well. And as I say, we wish everybody a very good year ahead. And it is bashert that there is Zoom, so it was meant to be that you should be in Cape Town tonight. Thank you, and hope to see you again, in reality and not just virtually.
Thank you
Sei
very
gesund
much.
and Shana Tova.
Good year, good Gebench year.
Ashen Dank. Good night, everybody, from the Gitlin Library.